if you love something, like go all in, like take the chance, jump in. Don't be scared of failure. Don't be scared of hard work, because that's what it's going to take.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Keeping It Real Estate. I'm your co-host, Dan Breezy, and today we have a very special guest for you guys. He is a former NFL player who played for 8 seasons and now is an avid family man, an active real estate investor. Over his career in the NFL, he had over 5,000 yards and played in Super Bowl 48 with over 50 touchdowns during his career. He's married to the big-time country singer Jessie James Decker, where they shared a reality TV show together and are now getting ready to have their 4th child. So with that said, Eric Decker, welcome to the show.
Dan, great to see you, brother.
Hey, I'm so excited to have you on with us, dude. Thank you for being here. A little background for our listeners, just a kind of a side story. Eric and I went to the same high school together in central Minnesota, but we were 4 or 5 years apart or so. So I really only started to hear about Eric after I was out of high school, but we still had that just, hometown connection of growing up in the same area. And then fast forward, Eric goes on and becomes this big football star. And then the story is kind of wild for me in the sense that I'm in Aspen for my first X Games, and they just announced first time gold medal, Dan Breezy, here you go. And dude, no other than Eric shows up. He's the one who walks up, puts the medal around my neck. And it was just a crazy moment. So I'm glad you're here, Eric, and excited to get into this.
I appreciate you sharing that. I can't believe I forgot that last time we talked, but it's like it was meant to be, right? And what a cool experience that was. 2 kids from a really small town, big dreams, fulfilling the dreams of our life. And like to be able to share that moment was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was special for me for sure. We went out to dinner and it was an awesome time. So we're going to get into some real estate talk soon. But before we do that, I want to open it up with just the way your college and NFL career launched. You shared a story when we were in Nashville one day, and it surprised me. If I recall correctly, you walked on to the Minnesota Gophers as a tryout for the team. Am I remembering that story correct?
Well, I went for a one-day camp in high school, and really, I guess, being from a small town, not getting a lot of exposure, I was planning on going to like a small Division III school, Division II school. And so I went to this one-day camp and impressed enough that Coach Mason, Glenn Mason at the time, offered me a scholarship. But really, that changed the trajectory of my life. If I didn't go to that camp, who knows where I would be, what my career would have ended up looking like in athletics. That day was special, and I'm just thankful that I said yes to it, because otherwise, again, like I said, who knows where I'd be.
Yeah, did you get invited to go to that, or could any kid show up, or how did it come to be that you got to go?
Yeah, so they held a week-long camp, and really I think at that point it was to try to get local kids to evaluate. And I was kind of hesitant to wanting to do it. I was such a homebody, growing up in central Minnesota, the lakes, that's all I wanted to do this summer was like be on the lake, play some, baseball around Cold Spring and call it a day. And so I got invited to come down. It was like I had a baseball game actually the night prior. I'm like, well, I'm not going to miss my baseball game. So I played baseball. My mom got me in the car like 8 p.m. We drove down, stayed at my aunt's, and then next day showed up for really it was an all day from 8 a.m. to about 7 p.m. camp that I got invited to. Wow.
So was it kind of an instantaneous thing where you go to this camp, you get the full scholarship within one day? That Coach Glenn Mason, you said, he basically said by the end of that day, you're coming with us. Is that how quick it was?
Yeah. He called me up. It was probably about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And we just got done doing like one-on-one drills, receivers versus defensive backs. So I'm like, all right. So I go up to his office. It's like really cool. Get to meet him. Been a big fan of the Gophers. It's the state of Minnesota's team. And he's like, listen, kid, I think you did a great job today. We really like what you're showing. We want to offer you a scholarship. Go home, talk to your parents, think on it. I'm like, yes, I accept it. Like right there in the spot, I was pretty, I didn't want to let go of that opportunity. So I was like, don't worry about me having to think about it. Like, I already know this is it. This is really the only offer I had in my head, I'm thinking. So special moment.
Did you have any other offers that you actually were seeing coming in, or was this really the one?
This was the one big one. There's a bunch of like Division II schools, and then Division III can't give out scholarships really. So it was more like, hey, we're interested if you want to come play multiple sports, because I loved baseball as well and played basketball in high school and kind of, wanted to do everything. I didn't want to just like focus on one sport. I loved switching it up, kind of how each sport translates to the next. So it seemed attractive, I guess, to me to be close to home, go to a small school. That would be more of an easier transition.
That's what an awesome moment in time for you. So you get the word, you're playing college for 4 years with the Minnesota Gophers. And then did you know you were going to be drafted to the NFL then before the draft happened in 2010? Or was that a total surprise to you that day?
Well, I think by my end of my sophomore year, I started to feel like I could compete versus some of the best. Playing Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, I really felt like the caliber, that I went against, I was having success. And so I thought I had a chance, at that point. And rewind that a little bit. I mean, there was so many moments where I thought, I was going to give up. So my first year, I redshirted, just practiced, didn't get to play games. So basically a practice dummy. And I remember you being from Minnesota as well. It's like 4:30 in the morning. We got winter workouts in February. It's 5 degrees outside with a wind chill of like -15. Campus was big. So where they put us to stay was a hike to get to the facility. So I had my moped, snowmobile helmet on, snowmobile gear, I'm just wrapped up and I'm like freezing. It's 4:30 in the morning. It's dark. It's cold. I'm at the stoplight on my moped and I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, I don't want to do this. This isn't fun. I just want to go back home. That was kind of the challenge, the battle I was fighting internally. And thank God, like the resilience of just like, all right, just get through today. And then the next day, get through that day. Just kind of put the blocks on top of each other to get to a place where, all right, I got a chance to play now. I got through the hard times. And that was such a confidence builder for me. Like I said, just a character builder to fast forward to get to my sophomore, junior year and really be able to compete versus the best and give it all I had and know that I had an opportunity to do this as a career.
Yeah, man, I was looking back at some of your stats and that's how it kind of read. I was reading through your college career as the first time I really dug in and was looking at it as we were getting ready for this call. And it seemed like that your confidence you could see each year, just you started to make more plays, you started to get more touchdowns. You could just see your confidence level went up year after year. So that's really cool. And I love that you shared that, Eric, that, because you think about a football player, professional football player, you went through parts where you were like, man, is this worth it? Am I in the right spot? It's really hard. And you just focused on let's get through today. And I think that's so critical. It doesn't matter where you are in your life. Everyone goes through it. I mean, I have those days where you're like, man, today really sucked. And I feel like I failed. You pick up tomorrow and keep going. And I think that's important to keep in mind for everyone who's listening here is that get through today and just keep your head, keep grinding, keep going.
That's it. Yeah. And I think I look back and what I really think about is just, being in the present. And that's more so a focus now in my life than it ever was, because at that point, being a young, athlete is always what's tomorrow going to look like? What's the next game going to look like? What did I do well in the past? Like, what can I get better at? And like focus on what you can control. And that's the present, right? And what opportunities you have to get better as a person, as an athlete, education-wise, and just being able to stay in the moment, I think is such a huge lesson, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow and you can't control what has happened. You can just only, pivot in some facet. So.
Yeah. How did you handle the pressure? I mean, you're in college, you're still a pretty young kid and you're getting used to playing in front of thousands and thousands of people and the pressure's on. How did you handle that transition from high school to now? There's actually some serious media here. Yeah.
You lean on the guys in the locker room. We had a couple pretty bad seasons. My sophomore year, my junior year was better, and my senior year as well. But my sophomore year, we struggled as a team. And, it's tough to struggle and also, get comfortable with, like you said, what external pressures come with it as a college athlete. And really just leaned on my teammates to get through, and we stuck together. I think that's the realization, is that you need everyone, but as men, like you need other men to walk this journey with and walk through life. And so that bond was so strong. We knew the work and the time we were putting in And we had that respect,
Yeah.
of doing it. And so that's all you got at that point is those inside the building that are in it together to kind of focus on and lean on.
Gosh. Yeah, I can relate to that too. And even in real estate investing these days, I mean, you're going through some challenging times. There's no question about it. And you're leaning on your team. Who are your business partners? And, you're going through some stuff. And I think that's another great point. Keep that in mind in life as you're going through. Get partnered up with people who have similar characters, values, and goals, and you work together. And you're so much stronger going as a team. I mean, it happened in our snowboarding career too. And we're building these video parts. We're out until 2, 3 in the morning, and you're not getting the clip, and you want to quit. And your team that's there with you is going to push you. And if they are the right people, you're going to be a lot better at the end of the year if you got the right people around you. So that's awesome.
That's right. And I think that's the beauty of athletics too, is you understand the concept of team and what it means to rely on someone else, and not have full control, and to trust and to have compassion and just to really buy in. Once you do, it's definitely a special thing. And that's one hard part about, transitioning out of sports is trying to find and identify and build that team again, because it's hard to do. It's hard to replicate.
Yeah, man, I hear you there. Yeah, I'm so grateful for the people that we're now surrounded around in real estate, because it feels like it's kind of our new team. It's my new identity too. And, I want to talk to you about that a little bit later once we get further along about, the transition out. But before we do that, I just kind of bringing it back to you have this college career, you go through a huge change, you're learning a ton. And then the NFL draft happens and you are drafted, I think, 3rd round of the Denver Broncos. Is that correct?
Yep.
And so that day, do you remember that day? I mean, what was going on in your mind during that day? Did you know it was going to happen, or was it a complete surprise?
I knew there was a lot of interest from teams because during the combine process, you go to Indianapolis, you do all the testing, you take team visits where you get to meet with coaching staff, front office. But for me, it was unique because I had a season ending injury in college. It was a major injury. It was a Liz Frank sprain, which basically is like the separation of your midfoot. And so I had like a plate put in, a couple screws to kind of, secure my midfoot. And it's about a 9-month, like an ACL, 9-month recovery process. And so I'm like, why me? Why did this happen? It was December of my senior year in college. And so I'm going through pre-draft workouts. I can't run. I can't jump. I can't do routes. I can't do anything physical. It's just basically testing and interviewing. And so I was nervous. I didn't know, usually they probably want to see a wide receiver run and see how he moves. I think my work was shown in college on tape and what I did in games. But at the same point, they want to evaluate you in person and see what you do under pressure. And so I didn't know what to expect. I got to draft day, knew there's teams interested, and then each team that I was interested picked a different receiver. And I had probably 100 people over at my mom's house for the second day of the draft. And I was the 87th pick, so it was towards the end of the 3rd round. And back then, it used to be 2nd, 3rd round was day 2. Man, I started getting so anxious because I'm like, I'm not going to get called. This is going to be a disappointment. I got all these people here, nothing to celebrate. And I'm walking up and down the street and just kind of like taking a deep breath, trying to get in a good place mentally. And I come back, I sit down outside, and boom, my phone rings. And it's Josh McDaniels from the Denver Broncos. And it was like, almost surreal. The feeling is like, okay, wow. I mean, I got a phone call. Like, what? Thank you. Just basically had a quick conversation with them, got passed to my agent. I go upstairs and tell everybody what just happened, because the draft is always a little bit behind real time. And it's just an eruption of celebration, just, a moment I'll cherish forever. These are all people, friends, family that have been a part of the journey for me to get to the NFL. And so everyone has a hand on it, and just a blessing to be able to celebrate that moment with them.
Wow. What a special moment indeed. It's surprising and a little bit amazing that there isn't more clarity of what team you're going to go to and how it's going to, unfold until I thought maybe you would have like, yeah, I knew it was happening. I didn't maybe have the exact contract worked out, but you knew. But it sounds like, based on pacing up and down the street, you really didn't know for sure.
No, I didn't. And like I said, there was teams that wanted or showed interest. that picked a receiver. So once you pick a wide receiver, you're probably going to wait multiple rounds or, all draft before you pick up another receiver. So it was like, what's going to happen?
Wow. How would you say, I mean, looking back as you were going through your career, how would you describe your work ethic versus other guys on your team? I mean, did everyone work their asses off at the NFL level, or were there some guys who just were kind of, halfway in and halfway out, or what was that like?
I would say majority work their ass off, because in the NFL, consistency and just being reliable separates you from the pack. And so there were so many more athletic guys that probably didn't have a job because the inconsistency and the investment of not knowing what you're going to get that day was a liability. And so, I think for me, that's the reason why I made it to the NFL, was my desire and drive to outwork people. I'm not the fastest, the strongest, the quickest by any means, but I definitely will outlast you in a 4-quarter game and show up and be in the right spot when asked to. And so majority was the NFL. Everybody was obviously athletic and had talent, but it was the desire to do that day in, day out that gave people longevity.
Yeah. You bring up the word, I have to ask, your desire. What was your drive, or where did you get the desire to push yourself that hard? Because I think about in my athletic career, so many guys were so dang good, so gifted, but they didn't have the desire. They didn't have the drive. They didn't do whatever it would take for as long as it would take. They just would either lose momentum or get sidetracked and get off on another path. What was it that got you going, that drive, that desire? Where did it come from?
Well, I've done some work around this, because it can be a slippery slope too. Like football was my identity, and I think once I lost it, it was kind of a hard transition to figuring out, okay, well, who is Eric Decker now without football? And I think for the longest time early on was like validation. Validation for me was like being loved, I guess, from family and from those close to me. That's how I thought I had to show my worth, was performance, was success in sports. I love sports. Sports was, big in the town we grew up in, was a big part of my family, and I got into it early on, but I think I was chasing, obviously, validation, like I was saying. And then it was almost like the fear of failure. It was the fear of disappointment. A lot of things that probably weren't healthy in any manner, but it just pushed me to keep getting better and to not settle, and to like, I want to outwork that person. I want to, beat that person, and I'll compete them in a particular sport. And it just seemed like it kept building chip by chip. And, going to college, it was just another step up, another opportunity to like showcase that. And again, maybe driven by fear sometimes, and driven by like being a people pleaser and perfectionist, in the sense of like, well, I'm not gonna give up until I figure it out, and I'm at the top. And like, that was the journey, and that was the driving force, which was great. But now I look back, it was like, what? I think I put too many eggs in the basket of like allowing football and statistics, performance, identify like who I was and what my worth or value was. And so that's, one of my biggest lessons now for my kids, is having them understand like that's not who you are, it's what you do. And that like when you evaluate or look at a game, it's not about, okay, how many touchdowns you scored, or it's like, what are the tangibles that you did? Were you a good teammate? Or, did you do the right thing in this moment? Did you handle adversity well? All the things I think that you can carry over to real life, as a father, husband, just a career person as well. So those things for me now are definitely important to like look at and see a different lens.
Man, well said, Eric. And as I listen to you talk, I think about I'm associated with my life, and so much of what you said I can relate to so well. Obviously, we were on very different platforms, and you had a much more public and larger career. But man, as far as going from nothing to a snowboarder to trying to be a multiple X Games gold medalist, a lot of the stuff you're talking about, very similar stuff. Very similar. So I can relate with you there. And, the identity piece that you're talking about, I know in our world, it's awful. It's horrible. One of our good buddies committed suicide. And I didn't know that's how he was feeling. And I would give anything to go back and talk to him. And just if I had some time to help kind of just paint the picture of that, like you said, it's what you do. It's not who you are. It's, there's so much more to go after your snowboarding career or your athletic career is done. So I'm sure that if you got any other athletes in your life, you're going to be able to help them through that transition. And as your kids grow, I mean, I know your kids play football, and how hard are you pushing your kids on playing football? Is it something that you're really wanting them to get after, or what's your kind of motto there with kids?
I think just support in whatever passions they have. My middle child loves football, and he's got a great group of buddies, and they all play multiple sports together. But football's his favorite right now, and I'm supportive of it until he doesn't love it anymore. I think team sports is so key to building a value system, building good character. That I want him to be there. Obviously, there's risk like anything of injury of certain things that you got to be careful of. But again, I'm not going to pull him from something if he's got a desire and a passion for it and wants to work towards it. So I'm not pushing him down that path, but I'm also not pulling him out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other young athletes just listening in, let's just say they have an idea of maybe wanting to try to be an athlete. Any advice you'd give them or want to chase a professional career?
Yeah. Well, I would say that if you love something, go all in. Take the chance. Jump in. Don't be scared of failure. Don't be scared of hard work, because that's what it's going to take. And I think to piggyback off that with parents is let your kids fail, first of all, and feel what it's like to not always have success. That's where the greatest growth is when you fail and when you got to get back up and how you get back up. And so that's a big lesson that I think, today a lot of parents have a hard time with is not letting their kids, they kind of keep them in a bubble in a sense. And so try to challenge parents to allow them independency and failure. But for athletes, it's go all in, and don't be afraid.
That's Minnesota talk right there. I see it so much as being a parent as well. And I see it with friends of letting kids get uncomfortable and not saving them too quickly. Let them build some resilience, let them get into that uncomfortable state to push themselves and to find new boundaries. And it is difficult. I mean, I've got 3 kids and I want to jump in and quickly, we were snowboarding yesterday with my little guy, and he kept falling over and over and over again. And I just want to pick him up and say, here, let me just do this for you. But at the end of the day, you just got to keep getting up. You just got to keep going. And that's that grit. If you can teach grit to kids, man, they got a lot of potential.
My view on it is that it's like a lost art in a sense, and I just want to make sure that it's instilled in these kids nowadays that you got to build that character, build that grit, because that's what's going to get you through the hard times. Hard times are not going to go away. Life isn't going to be easy for anyone. You're going to go through some of those ups and downs, and that's what's going to get you back on track and enjoy the really good moments is when you have the toughness and resiliency to get through the hard times.
Yeah. I heard a quote, good times create weak people. Weak people create bad times. Bad times create hard people, or grit people create good times. So I think we're probably heading towards, so we had some really good times, and there's going to be some more challenges ahead for the next few decades here in the U.S. So kind of wrapping up or just moving NFL. So what would be the highlight experience of you being in the NFL, looking back at your very successful career?
There's so many good memories. I think obviously playing in the Super Bowl is a childhood dream that I got to have. Not win one, but compete in one. I think really the friendships, I think about the locker room and all the good times off the field I had. I mean, there's so many accolades. Like 2013, we still hold the records for the best offense in NFL history. Playing with Payton Man was unbelievable. Demaryius Thomas, coming in with him and having a fun 4 years playing wide receiver together was unbelievable. Overtime touchdown win in New York against the Patriots. A lot of cool moments, all the playoff games throughout the years. But ultimately, it was just that bond off the field. The dinners on the road, the off-season work in the middle of the heat, like all those things where you just kind of are all in and like you got your guys that you're diving in the bunker with and you build that love and that, trust with. I think that is something that, again, through transition, it's hard to find, kind of replicate those relationships because there's nothing like the environment that I used to have in the NFL that I can find here, in the sense of real life. And so those are some good memories and just appreciate the friendships I made.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Any regrets, that you have looking back at your career that if you could go back, you'd have done it differently, or any lessons, I guess, maybe you learned from some pain?
Yeah, I think, how my career ended, view has changed maybe a little bit. Like originally when I retired, I came off a bunch of injuries and I think I just was so wore out mentally and emotionally that like I thought I was ready. Just, I'm done. I still feel like it was the right time, but I wish, I would have put more of myself into football at that time. I kind of was halfway out the door. And so anytime you're 1 foot out the door, you're never going to have success. And that kind of was where I was at mentally. Mm-hmm. And it was uncomfortable because I never really was in a position ever to like not give 100%. So there's a little bit, maybe a regret around that. But also a lesson learned. I think that's how I look at it, is that was an opportunity for me to look back and understand like how I would have handled it differently or how I would have processed it differently. And it's just helpful, obviously, moving forward on making better decisions.
Yeah, 100%. What would you say was the instigator of you starting to have your foot halfway out the door? I know for me with my career was my first son. And, yep. Just the idea of I could die and things can go haywire quickly here. And I started to be half in, and that actually made it much more dangerous being a snowboarder because you're not fully prepared. You're not coming to the spot 100% prepared. So What was it for you?
Yes, similar. I'd say that my love for my family was so much greater. And I think that passion for football started to wear, and it wasn't the same because my priorities shifted as well. And so I think once that happened, I could feel the divide of like where the passion, where the time was spent, my energy was spent. It was dedicated and spent towards my family. And that's definitely, like you said, the reason why I started changing my mindset.
Yep, that's good stuff. So what would you say, people who come from nothing and have some big success, we're fortunate, we have some really great people on these podcasts. What would be some of the core values, or, what did your parents, what are the things your parents taught you that you think about or you heard growing up that helped you the most? Do you have anything that stands out? Because with my mom and my dad, it was basically do what you love and go all the way. Just like you kind of said, do what you love and commit to it and just don't back down. And that rings in my head over and over and over again. And I heard it growing up every day. So anything that you heard specifically?
Yeah. Well, on that note, same thing that holds true for me is my dad used to tell me when I was young, if you're not going to do something 100%, why do it? I always think about that. When there's an opportunity that comes up, am I going to give all of myself to this opportunity? And if I'm not, then it's not worth doing. And that's kind of how I look at things now. I feel like that was super helpful. I think just being open-minded, and I think just the character of resiliency, like you having tough times, they don't define you. It's what you do with them. That's the character builder. So that was my biggest thing. Just keep going and giving all of myself. 100% is why I got to where I am today.
So one quick question before we jump into some real estate stuff, with Jessie, your wife, being a country singer and you guys owning several businesses, how do you keep it all together? How do you handle the normal things of life, like raising a family? Is it challenging for you guys, or what have you figured out a process to make it work?
Yeah, I'd say that, over the years, there's always challenges when you try to balance a lot of things. Our kids and our family time is definitely the priority for us. And so in a day, we have certain hours that are kind of work hours. And then when kids are home, it's focus on what's important, spending the meal together. They obviously have activities now. It's super important to have that core. And then, we've gotten better at saying no to things, especially Jess, she, sings, writes books, obviously has different ventures that she's involved in, businesses. And just like a multitude of things because she's very talented. And so being a little bit more selective, a little more narrow on where we put time and energy has been super important because it gives you kind of that balance we all need. And so I wouldn't say that we figured it out. I don't know if you ever figure it out, but there's definitely a synergy in the sense of how days flow, and now having a fourth kid on the way, so this is a time to kind of pause and enjoy, where we're at in the present with new baby, obviously kids. They kind of dictate your day of drop off, pick up from school and activities. So we're looking forward, I guess, to this kind of chapter in our life. And we'll see where it takes us.
That's awesome. I love what you said too. I think I heard you said focus on what's important, and that's dinner at home with the family. I couldn't agree more. You can go off and be doing all this stuff and be busy dad, and all of a sudden you look back and these kids who really just wanted your time and attention, and you weren't there. And that's one thing I think about a lot is as we build our business and as we go down this new path. I got out of snowboarding because of the risk of possibly serious injury or death and then travel. And as you go into your next career, all of a sudden you're back on airplanes and you're just heading down this other path. And I think it's important to get clear on what it means to you here so that I don't want to have that regret when I look back and say, dang, I really wish I'd have been around more for my, those young kids' years. So awesome, Eric, you got your head so clear on your shoulders of what's important.
Yeah, I love that because I feel so many dads now that are super intentional with where they spend their time and how they spend it. And, I think as natural providers of the family, we think we have to kind of run that hamster wheel of chasing success. And in our culture, success is money, it's materials, it's this and that. But really, to me, success is, valuing your time with your kids and how important a father figure is to be present, be consistent with it. And those memories will never come back. Money will never replace that time with family. And so to be able to surround yourself with like-minded people that way, and I think it's going to make, our world a better place when everyone kind of has that similar mindset.
Yeah, it's great. Well, congrats on the fourth kid on the way. What's the due date you guys have? Is it clear?
10 days.
Whoa.
Around the corner, baby.
That's exciting, man. Well, I'm excited for you. You know if it's a boy or girl or?
We're having our boy.
Boy, congrats. Wow. So that'll be, what is it? Two boys, 2 girls?
1 girl, 3 boys.
1 girl, 3 boys. Wow, dude. Congrats. Yeah. That's an early congrats. I'm wishing the best. Prayers for you guys. Healthy birth for mom and baby. And that's awesome, exciting stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. So jumping into some real estate talk, what was it about real estate investing that got you interested in the first place? You do some investing overall, but what attracted you to real estate?
I've always loved real estate. I mean, I loved architecture, and I guess just the fact that it's an asset, you can own it, it's tangible, and that idea. And so when I first started coming to Nashville in 2011, when I met Jess, it was just starting to kind of gain some attention, and the growth was starting to come and came at the right time, truthfully, but seeing the accelerated growth and want to be a part of it and really having friends in the industry of building, single family homes, and then the success that we started having, it was like, this is fun, because you're creating something. And really I wasn't the creator, but seeing someone's vision from paper come to life and a family move into it was amazing. And then just seeing kind of how it worked from a tax standpoint and just investment standpoint, starting to learn more about commercial and multifamily stuff was just, again, an opportunity for me to have a tangible investment, but also feel like a part of something that's growing. I know multifamily stuff, usually assets can be already built, or commercial for that matter can be built, but it's just the transaction of it that was exciting to me because I always loved finances. I loved, like I said, architecture and just real estate in general. So that kind of got me into this world of investing because I've tried and still do obviously stock market stuff, do venture deals, obviously different equity plays, but real estate for me, I just know that it's a strong class. It's not going away. People need a place to live, and I'm here for the long haul.
Yeah. all that resonates with me as well. You know, the idea of something you can touch, you can see it's there. It's going to be there for the long haul. I'm right there with you. So a lot of these, you know, former athletes, they end up going broke after their career winds down. And it's obviously not always the case, but it happens a lot. What action or what did you take to help prevent that from happening? How did you know? What did you do differently than some of these other guys, do you think?
It's funny because I tell a story too, is when I first met Jess, I mean, she thought I was like completely broke because I was so frugal. I mean, my first 2 years I lived with Demaryius Thomas in Denver. I would drive from Denver to Minnesota when I go back home. I wouldn't fly a lot. Like I just wouldn't want to spend money. And it was because, you know, I think maybe more so, again, the fear of losing it, but also what do I need to buy that's going to like bring me happiness? Or what I always think, what's the ROI on buying this? That's kind of my thought process. I don't know where that comes from, to be honest with you. I haven't figured it out, but that's how I think. And so a lot of guys buy flashy things, whether it's cars or jewelry or, you know, and jewelry and some things may have like a value to it and hold value, but like so many, I call them liabilities that are being purchased and bought, and that's just like, it's gone. And like, I want to stick with like building my asset class and knowing that, you know, obviously it costs money. Yeah. But that money's put away and it's going to just slowly build into a better asset and a more, you know, flourishing asset. And that's really just been always a thought process for me. And I think just very, very frugal. I've always been very frugal. I think over time I loosened the straps and kind of enjoyed obviously the fruits of my labor. Not having kids, you're going to have to, but just that mindset of how you spend money and how you value it.
Yeah, man, I love that too. You know, I mean, what's the ROI on this purchase? I think about that a lot in my life of, do we need that car necessarily? I mean, do we really need that car? Or, you know, would it be better to have maybe an extra trip or maybe you just stay home, you know, like it doesn't need to even be money spent. And so I really appreciate that comment, and I can relate to being very frugal growing up in Minnesota. Maybe it was just kind of the way we were all, or at least this is the way I was brought up too, is keep what you can. If you don't need it, why give it away? Why go above and beyond? Just frugality was always huge in my life. So it says a lot. So when you're talking, let's say to a group of football players or athletes that just signed their first contract or they're in their beginning stages of their career, what financial advice would you give them? I mean, it sounds like frugality and getting into investments is kind of the way you went right out of the gate.
Yeah. Well, I think understanding, if you can zoom out and look, that this is a very short window of time where you're going to be making the amount of money you'll be making. You won't ever probably make this money again in your career. At least 95% of the athletes will not be. And so how can I accumulate and hold on as much as possible? Because if you just look at like conservative investing and you get a 2, 3%, 4% return off that money, like possibly you could live off that money. That could be your, you know, annual expense or cover your expenses year to year. But I guess I look at, you know, it's a better job of education, at least in the NFL, of a players association, trying to give them resources. All the financial advisors are vetted for the most part, but finding someone that has similar values and characteristics. And I think to that point, like being frugal, really thinking, okay, a dollar isn't really a dollar, it's 50 cents in our case, and knowing that something costs you $100,000 is really, you got to make $200,000 to pay for that thing. And so just the education of knowing what the value of a dollar looks like, especially in certain tax brackets, and what is needed, you know. And I always think about this, and I'm almost embarrassed to never say it, but like I look at, you know, buying a pair of pants, I'm like, okay, well, it's $50. Will I wear it 50 times and get, you know, it's $1 a time I wear it, or, you know, can I wear it 100 times? It's like, you got to have that idea of like, is this something that's going to bring value, and it's going to get my money's worth in a sense. I'm not just,
yeah, 100%. I mean, and the idea of, you know, you got the goose and the egg. If you're making your money, it's your seed money. It's just the beginning. Now can you take the money you've made and put it into something that produces the rest of your life?
Yep.
That one simple concept, you know, is something that I didn't hear much growing up either, of you make the money and you go and spend it immediately. Well, now you're on that hamster wheel. You're just running. You're running. running, and you can spend it quickly, as everyone has seen with multiple big athletes. So getting that seed money invested into something where it takes care of the destruction of the value as they continue to print it, and to give you some cash flow to live off of, that's the best chance at freedom I've found so far. And the sooner athletes can get into that mentality, the better off they're going to be the rest of their lives.
Yeah. If you think about it, like if you get into real estate, I mean, that money's tied up. Like you can't touch that money. So it's almost like you're protecting yourself from spending the money that you've earned. And that's, to your point, it's something that's going to grow over time conservatively. And it's like, you want to be able to reap the benefits, like you said, of what you've earned in that short window.
Yeah. The real estate, it's tied up your cash, it's hedged against inflation, and now it's kicking off cash flow. So you've got a lot of things happening, which is what I think makes real estate so enticing for so many investors.
Yeah, 100%.
So as you started to see that your career was going to come to an end, you talked about your identity. You talked about some of like who's Eric Decker. What would you describe now? Where would you say you are now? Like who are you now in the way that you see yourself and the way you occur for yourself?
I think an important role for me in this kind of season of my life is just that, like being a father and being kind of an emotional leader in that sense. I've done, just like a lot of work in the mental health space. I got a buddy who started a foundation. I just feel like it's super important as, I start to look at my community, having kids, especially athletes, the tools are there, but there's not a lot of execution in like helping some of these kids emotionally develop at a younger age, especially males. And so I think I'm super interested in that space because it fills my soul, and it's a way to give back and be able to kind of help build a framework, when you're struggling with sports, you're struggling in life, and knowing that you're not alone. There's a lot ahead of you that can share their stories and be the support system as you journey through your own life. And so I think, that's probably a path I would love to go down and be more focused on. But for sure, being husband, father, and kind of emotional supporter is a huge role of mine now. And then just enjoying, obviously some passive investing that way as well.
Yeah, dude, man. I love that you called it to the season of life, because that's right. You're in a different season here, and wow, what power you have as a leader and a dad of 4, and to be a support to Jess and all that to, and I'm sure the impact you're leaving on the people around, and it goes out far bigger than I bet you probably even realize or know. So that's an awesome perspective to have at what, 40 or 30, 37 years old. What are you? 37, 36? Yep.
I think I'm 37. I don't know.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
I'll be 37 this year.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
There you go.
Anything you'd share with athletes who are scared about the imminent end of their career? It's coming. What advice would you have for them?
Well, just to know that it is coming, and like there is an end. That's one thing that's guaranteed. And we all want to be able to have control over when we say we're done. But for the most part, usually you don't. And so being prepared, and that can look in multiple ways, but just knowing like, what can I get into next that helps me grow as a person, challenges me, fills the things that I look as important in my life, and just the preparation, because in sports, preparation is huge. And so in life, the same way. Once you get to that place, it's not going to be maybe necessarily easy, but it'll be easier if you already have kind of the idea, the tools to be able to work through that and figure out what that looks like. And give yourself some grace and time too, because it's not like, we all can jump into whatever the next thing is. We may have that privilege, but majority won't. And so you got to give yourself a little bit of time and space to kind of navigate that.
Yeah, man. Well said, Eric. I could not agree more with all of that. As we wind this down, the last couple questions here, as you're looking at different investments, it doesn't necessarily even need to be real estate. What would be, some of the big things that you identify or look for to say, yeah, this is something I would take a risk on and I would look further into? Are there any investing criteria that you have or pieces that you have where it kind of guides you in saying, yeah, I'm going to go, or now I'm going to hold off?
Yeah, I think first one is it something that I'm passionate about and, will get me excited to be a part of. And then second is the people, who's involved, who's running it, because you're more so investing in that team or that person more so than sometimes the product or concept or investment. And so those are two huge things. And I also think, for me, we've done some like preventative health products that we're going to evolve with. And that's also a space for me that's super important. Health is super important. To be able to provide, preventative health is key. And so I think, again, it falls into being passionate about it and liking what it is would be really the things that I look for first before we like dig deeper and do more due diligence.
Yeah. Great pieces of advice there. I'm right with you there as far as, is there something that's intriguing for you? Are you interested in it? One thing I love about real estate too, you kind of touched on it, was that if you come in and you buy right, you can add a lot of value to the homes of these residents that are living there. And you can really help properties be a safer place for friends and family. We just bought a property in Dallas, near Dallas Love Field, and we're putting in a brand new soccer field with lights and stadium. We're probably overdoing it, but because it's something that's going to attract the parents and the kids, but it's what a cool place to be able to come into the middle of this apartment, and around it are all these buildings, and you've got your soccer field right there to play with all your buddies, hopefully, that are all living on site. So I'm right there with you on that. And just picking the people. People are everything in real estate investing. I mean, the sponsors, and it doesn't mean it's always going to go well. You guys, I think that, if you've invested long enough, I'm preaching the choir here, but if you're with the right people and they're determined and they're persistent and they've got the right core values, you've got a much better chance of coming out the other side with a win. So those are great. Yep. Yeah. When it looks at just real estate investing in particular, would you say you're more of a capital gains investor who's looking for in and out? Are you looking more for cash flow, depreciation, all of it, or what's your main focus?
I think it's changed over time. I think going more from single family stuff, like I was saying, to like commercial, warehouse, multifamily, the depreciation, just kind of the longer term holds. Obviously, cash flow is a bonus to that. But it's just, it goes away from just the transaction. It's like you build a house, you sell it, boom, transact. And this is, like I said, just a longer term play, building a portfolio that can, be a tax haven as well. And so my wife will always be active, I feel like, in her career. And this is just a way, obviously, to protect the hard work that she's done.
Wow. That's good stuff, dude. I love it. Cool. So, before we wind down, do you have any book recommendations that really helped you, or anything you've read or podcasts you've listened to recently that you think would be beneficial for our listeners, made a positive impact on you?
Yeah. Well, there's actually one I got on my desk. It's nothing to do with investing or real estate, but it's called The One Truth. It's written by John Gordon, who has written a lot of books, and he speaks to a lot of athletic teams. I think also a lot of businesses, corporations. But basically, it's elevate your mind, unlock your power, heal your soul. It's really cool. I mean, it has like a spiritual background to it. I feel like that's something that's a lost art as well. I don't want to get, obviously, with politics and religion, but finding your spiritual foundation is super important to having a balanced life as well. So to me, this kind of speaks the truth of what life looks like and what the one truth really is.
I'm writing that down. It's interesting. We had John Gordon on our podcast, and
did you really?
Yeah, we did. And it was only a 20-minute interview, but I remember when we got done, I'm like, that guy's special. That dude's thought process and habits are unbelievable. So I remember thinking, I don't know if he was writing that book at the time or whatnot, but I definitely wanted to read it. So I'm writing it down right here because it was an impactful 15, 20 minutes. Yeah, if you go back, I can't remember what episode it is. I was just trying to scan through here think in like episode 70 or 80, somewhere in there. So if you want to go back, you can find it.
I'm gonna take a look. That's awesome.
Okay. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us on the show today. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Keeping It Real Estate. If you haven't already, make sure to visit our website and fill out the Contact Us form to ensure we can keep you updated with the most important real estate news, as well as tune in for our future investment opportunities. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week on another episode of Keeping It Real Estate.